statement of his having left her in the bosom of that family, with which, as his aforesaid parents well knew, her best affections were incorporated; that he would remind them that nothing less than her imperious sense of duty and devoted attachment to her old master and missus, likewise Miss Dolly and young Mr Joe, should ever have induced her to decline that pressing invitation which they, his parents, had, as he could testify, given her to lodge and board with them, free of all cost and charge, for evermore. Lastly, that he would help her with her box upstairs, and then repair straight home, bearing her blessing and her strong injunctions to mingle in his prayers a supplication that he might in course of time grow up a locksmith, or a Mr Joe, and have Mrs Vardens and Miss Dollys for his relations and friends. Having brought this admonition to an end, upon which, to say the truth, the young gentleman, for whose benefit it was designed, bestowed little or no heed, having to all appearance his faculties absorbed in the contemplation of the sweetmeats, Miss Miggs signified to the company in general that they were not to be uneasy, for she would soon return, and with her nephew's aid prepared to bear her wardrobe up the staircase. "My dear," said the locksmith to his wife, "do you desire this?" "I desire it!" she answered. "I am astonished. I am amazed at her audacity. Let her leave the house this moment." Miggs, hearing this, let her end of the box fall heavily to the floor, gave a very loud sniff, crossed her arms, screwed down the corners of her mouth, and cried, in an ascending scale, "Oh, good gracious!" 3 distinct times. "You hear what your mistress says, my love," remarked the locksmith. "You had better go, I think. Stay, take this with you, for the sake of old service." Miss Miggs clutched the bank note he took from his pocket book and held out to her, deposited it in a small red leather purse, put the purse in her pocket, displaying as she did so a considerable portion of some undergarment made of flannel, and more black cotton stocking than is commonly seen in public, and tossing her head as she looked at Mrs Varden, repeated, "Oh, good gracious!" "I think you said that once before, my dear," observed the locksmith. "Times is changed, is they, Mim?" cried Miggs, bridling. "You can spare me now, can you? You can keep 'em down without me? You're not in wants of any one to scold or throw the blame upon no longer, ain't you, Mim? I'm glad to find you've grown so independent. I wish you joy, I'm sure." With that she dropped a curtsy, and keeping her head erect, her ear towards Mrs Varden, and her eye on the rest of the company, as she alluded to them in her remarks, proceeded. "I'm quite delighted, I'm sure, to find sich independency, feeling sorry, though, at the same time, Mim, that you should have been forced into submissions when you couldn't help yourself. It must be great vexations, specially considering how ill you always spoke of Mr Joe, to have him for a son-in-law at last. And I wonder Miss Dolly can put up with him, either, after being off and on for so many years with the coachmaker. But I have heerd say that the coachmaker thought twice about it, he, and that he told a young man as was a friend of his that he hoped he knowed better than to be drawed into that, though she and all the family did pull uncommon strong." Here she paused for a reply, and receiving none, went on as before. "I have heerd say, Mim, that the illnesses of some ladies was all pretensions, and that they could faint away stone dead whenever they had the inclinations to do so. Of course I never see sich cases with my own eyes, ho, he, nor master neither, ho, he. I have heerd the neighbours make remark as some one as they was acquainted with was a poor good-natured mean-spirited creetur as went out fishing for a wife one day and caught a tartar. Of course I never to my knowledge see the poor person himself, nor did you neither, Mim. Ho, no. I wonder who it can be, don't you, Mim? No doubt you do, Mim. Ho, yes, he. Again Miggs paused for a reply, and none being offered, was so oppressed with teeming spite and spleen that she seemed like to burst. "I'm glad Miss Dolly can laugh," cried Miggs with a feeble titter. "I like to see folks a-laughing. So do you, Mim, don't you? You was always glad to see people in spirits, wasn't you, Mim? And you always did your best to keep 'em cheerful, didn't you, Mim? Though there ain't such a great deal to laugh at now, either, is there, Mim? It ain't so much of a catch after looking out so sharp ever since she was a little chit, and costing such a deal in dress and show, to get a poor common soldier with one arm, is it, Mim? He. I wouldn't have a husband with one arm anyways. I would have 2 arms. I would have 2 arms if it was me, though instead of hands they'd only got hooks at the end, like our dustmen." Miss Miggs was about to add, and had indeed begun to add, that taking them in the abstract, dustmen were far more eligible matches than soldiers, though to be sure when people were past choosing they must take the best they could get, and think themselves well off too, but her vexation and chagrin being of that internally bitter sort which finds no relief in words, and is aggravated to madness by want of contradiction, she could hold out no longer, and burst into a storm of sobs and tears. In this extremity she fell on the unlucky nephew tooth and nail, and plucking a handful of hair from his head, demanded to know how long she was to stand there to be insulted, and whether or no he meant to help her to carry out the box again, and if he took a pleasure in hearing his family reviled, with other inquiries of that nature; at which disgrace and provocation the small boy, who had been all this time gradually lashed into rebellion by the sight of unattainable pastry, walked off indignant, leaving his aunt and the box to follow at their leisure. Somehow or other, by dint of pushing and pulling, they did attain the street at last, where Miss Miggs, all bloused with the exertion of getting there, and with her sobs and tears, sat down upon her property to rest and grieve until she could ensnare some other youth to help her home. "It's a thing to laugh at, Martha, not to care for," whispered the locksmith as he followed his wife to the window and good-humouredly dried her eyes. "What does it matter? You had seen your fault before. Come, bring up Toby again, my dear. Dolly shall sing us a song, and we'll be all the merrier for this interruption." Chapter 80